Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
And my name is James.
And it's been a nice little break. I have to admit, James, this last kind of 5-6 days of not having any football has been quite, not having any FPL to worry about, I should say. Forget not having any football, because the mighty England marched on yesterday with another crushing victory. Over the Giants.
It was such a thriller that I didn't even watch it, mate.
I bet Gold and Sullivan were squirming in their seats thinking, oh, we could have had this guy, Jesse. We could have had this guy if we had only got our wallets out.
Well, you've bought your Croatian fella, haven't you, whose name's escaped me already, Nikola Vlasic.
Yeah. So, there's not been any football, but truth be told, there's not been any FPL to worry about. It's been quite nice to have the intensity of all the preseason, first few game weeks, madness of the transfer window, to take a bit of time away from it and then now come fresh into this week. I do feel recharged enough to get my head straight for FPL, get my head straight, obviously, for Sky, for those paying that is even more important because of overhaul. And here we go again for the next kind of stint.
You and I might have been able to take our eyes off it a bit. I'm not sure the majority of the listeners have been taking their eyes off it.
Yeah, I don't know if they have. But I really took the view that there was no point in worrying until the transfer window was fully closed and the internationals were basically out of the way, so we knew what injuries and suspensions and nonsense with quarantine we had to deal with. Other than that, there was literally no point in looking at it, other than if you were desperately trying to battle a price rise or price fall.
No, I'm getting a lot of questions. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And my general answer is please wait till the internationals are finished. I mean, I take it you've seen the chaos of what happened in Brazil last night.
Yeah, the medical staff on the pitch or something.
The game was like 5 minutes old, and CONMEBOL, who's the Confederation of the South American Football Association, their officials marched on the pitch to take the Argentinian players off who weren't meant to be there because their documents, the two Villa players and the two Tottenham players, the documents have been falsified to say they hadn't been in the UK. It was fairly fucking obvious that they were in the UK, right? So I just like to point one thing out on that is it's highly likely it's not the players that have lied. And it's probably likely that Argentina haven't lied either. It's probably someone's gone, fill that in and just put, oh, well, they haven't been in the UK. That's it. That's that.
Obviously.
No, I don't even know if it's intentional. I think it will come out in the wash in the next few days. But the players haven't gone, oh, shit, should we hide this? I mean, I know footballers get bad critique, but they're not that silly, right?
No, but it's, of all the things to try and hide, it's a bit bloody obvious, isn't it?
Billions watching around the world the Premier League. Yeah, I mean, obviously you're not going to hide it, are you?
No.
But how did they even let it get to the point where these guys were named in the team and the game was allowed to take place? And
for 5 minutes,
absolute mess.
It's a very weird amount of time.
It's the biggest game in world football outside of Europe, right? And it gets postponed 5 minutes in because there's a couple of people there who have put something wrong on a form. It's a bit of a nonsense. Anyway, the point being is, like, so take me as an Emi Martinez owner. I know I've got to get rid of him, but right now I don't know if I'm about him for 1 week or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
If you're sitting there with Emi Buendia, someone listening to this podcast will be sitting there with Emi Buendia.
He was taken off the pitch yesterday. Did they put him in jail?
No, I think they've already gone back to Argentina, and we don't know if the Villa and Tottenham players are going to go and play this game against Bolivia on Thursday night, or if they're going to come home. Because the supposed agreement was they were going to go and play the Brazil game and then come back, go to Croatia, do the kind of quarantine training there, then come back to the UK. So they didn't have to spend 10 days in a hotel. So we don't know if they're going to play this Bolivia game or not. So if you're sitting there with Emi Buendia, you might have been getting into this week thinking, well, I was going to bench him against Chelsea anyway. Then I've got Everton at home the week after. And don't get me wrong, you're probably sitting there thinking you were selling anyway. But the information on a lot of stuff is still so important. Have you seen the Lukaku information this morning?
I haven't. No.
So Lukaku's got to go and have a scan on something. He's got a slight problem. He needs to have a scan on it. What does it mean? He's now yellow flagged. So stop rushing the. I mean, if you went early, if you made early transfers and you went early, fine. You've done it. I get that. You went early. Don't do it now. Like if you've waited this long, please wait till at least like Thursday or so.
Yeah, nothing's worth a 0.1. I haven't been completely under a rock. I did see Laporte came off at half time with an injury, which meant, at 5.3 million, I am all over John Stones.
If he's going to play,
rash, mate. Yeah. So if Laporte was out for 4 or 5 weeks, then I'd be what you think Aki's going to play ahead of Stones?
Not with the fixtures that Manchester City got coming out. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if John Stones played against Leicester away, Chelsea away, Liverpool away, and Aki played against Southampton at home. You could see that. I mean, that's the point. Do you want to steam into John Stones at 5.3 when 3 of City's next 4 fixtures are Leicester, Chelsea, and Liverpool away? I mean, it's tough, right?
Yeah.
They weren't great in the one away game we have seen them have so far this season.
Yeah. So I suppose it's kind of leading on to where we are with our teams at the moment. And this episode, as James would have highlighted on Twitter for those that follow there, we're going to be able to get into quite a bit more Q&A, mainly because there are no games to focus on from the weekend. But we'll give you a rundown of where we are with our teams, as well as talk about the big man, CR7, a little bit, and then also get into this Q&A. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of good questions. It's about 45 on Twitter, James. So I've had a quick scan through, and there's some different questions as well, as opposed to straightforward.
Is there questions about Ronaldo?
Should we Ronaldo or not? Of course there will be a couple, but we'll answer those off anyway. How are you feeling anyway about your team?
Well, I've had a good start. I've been very fortunate. I think I've had some lucky breaks so far. I've made 1 transfer since game week 1, which was swapping a 5.0 forward for a 4.5 forward, which looks like the first mistake of the season, because the transfer in hindsight shouldn't have been trying to find a 0.5. It should have been opening up the problem. And the problem was Constantino Tsimikas, which it just completely blocks any thoughts of Diogo Jota for me at the moment. And it blocks me because I've got other issues. And admittedly, there were issues that I couldn't necessarily see going into game week 3, like Ricardo Pereira picking up an injury. But there's a number of combinations that I'd potentially like to do, which would mean putting Jota into the squad. And obviously, I can't do it, because if I move Tsimikas and I put in Jota, that's ignoring the fact I've got Pereira injured and I've got Noemi Martinez probably for the next 2 game weeks, so therefore no goalkeeper. So this comes around to a need versus want, right? Would I like to throw Jota into my team if, and we don't know yet, Roberto Firmino is going to be out for 3 game weeks? Yeah, of course I would. That's something I would like to do. Do I need to? No. It's getting. I could be looking at taking -8s, -12s this week, and I'm not going to do it because it's need versus want. And actually, my squad, I've got some players with some difficult fixtures this week. Like Harvey Barnes is not doing well. He's got Manchester City at home this week. But then if I come through the other side, assuming everyone else has already sold, it's Brighton, Burnley and Palace. And then it's not a problem. You could say, okay, he's underperforming, but it's not a serious concern to have to want to get rid of him. I'm going to need to leave that this week. I'm possibly going to have to play Luke Ayling against Liverpool, which doesn't look great. But then we've highlighted Leeds' brilliant run of fixtures from game week 5 to at least 10 afterwards, where I'd be quite happy to play in most game weeks. The first thing I need to deal with is a goalkeeper. I haven't got a goalkeeper, possibly not got a goalkeeper for 2 weeks. And it's an easy way to find money. There are only 2 goalkeepers in consideration for myself. Jose Sarr of Wolves. We've spoken about this brilliant run of 11 game weeks. And for someone who's not set to, but kind of looking to wildcard later, i.e. around about the end of Wolves' good run, feel like that can go in and I can forget about it. But I know that really there's a good 4.5 million option I can just go to, who, because Martinez's ownership is high, and I realise a lot of that is not Twitter engagement, but he's still in 23% of teams, not going to be in 23% of teams come game week 4 or game week 5 once the deadlines come around. A lot are going to Sanchez by default. A lot of people have asked me over the last week, Raya or Backman. I'd still go Sanchez. That's exactly where I'm at with it. Yes, Raya's had a good start with Brentford, but following Brighton and Wolves, he's got Liverpool, West Ham, Chelsea, Leicester in a row. No, you're okay, thanks. I don't really want that. And Backman's got 3 great fixtures. But then between game week 7 and 15, Watford have Leeds, Liverpool, Everton, Arsenal, Manchester United, Leicester, Chelsea, and Manchester City. No, I don't want that either. So I think Backman and Raya would be the 2 options if you knew you were going to wildcard in game week 7, or if I knew I was. And I'm not saying that I won't, but I want to kind of avoid it if I can. So I think it's Sarr or Sanchez for myself. I want to go for Sarr, really, because I want some Wolves coverage. But then I'm looking at it and going, I can go Sanchez, and Semedo is an option. But I want to get someone like John Stones, as you've mentioned, as a replacement for Ricardo Pereira, who's another one where if they say, oh, he's only out for this week, I might move, say, Shimikas to Ben White, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Say, right, I've got Ben White this week against Norwich. Fine. Let's come back to Pereira for those decent fixtures. But the one I really want to stick in there is Rudiger. But I'm kind of in two minds about it. One, I think timing-wise is decent with Villa at home this week. That's obviously an okay fixture. And Tottenham away and Manchester City at home are two not great fixtures afterwards, but it's getting it ready for game week 7. And as we've seen over the last 9 months or so, Chelsea can keep clean sheets against even the best opposition. I think if you've got a Chelsea defender, you start them almost irrespective of fixture, because arguably pound for pound, they're the best defence in the league. So I kind of want to get that sorted. That's one ready to go then for game week 7 if I'm not going to be wildcarding at that period. So I think the most likely for me at the moment is Martinez to Sarr and Pereira to Rudiger, which is affordable. I've then got like $1 million in the bank at that point as well. The problem is what happens afterwards. So I can look at my team afterwards and go, I think I need to see Heung-min Son again this weekend to make a judgment call. I think if Son's on the right again this weekend, for me, that wants to become a sell. I'm not bothered about holding Son through Chelsea and Arsenal. That doesn't scare me. There's some good fixtures afterwards, and I think he's potentially a brilliant asset. And I spoke last week on one of the shows we did about a lot of people kind of going with, say, just Salah in midfield and then say 7.5 million and below, which kind of completely rules you out of getting to Son unless you sacrifice somewhere else, which once you get in the likes of Ronaldo, Lukaku, you're not going to do. So you either sacrifice Salah, possibly after game week 6, if you want to get someone like that. But there's hidden people there who are not a consideration now that might become like Jadon Sancho, for example. And I'm conscious of wanting to be around Heung-min Son's value for players like that. If there's serious interest in Kai Havertz, for example, further down the line, and other players that we can't see at the moment. But I think he's probably going to have to be my sacrifice, Sonny, rather than, say, Harvey Barnes. So I could get rid of Barnes and go down to like Sissoko, for example, in game week 5, and then immediately go to Danny Ings and to Lukaku. But then if I've got through this weekend with Danny Ings away to Chelsea, do I want to get rid of Danny Ings at home to Everton when Lukaku's going to Tottenham? And then you go, I'll leave it another week. And then Danny Ings has got Manchester United away, which is not so clever anymore. And while Lukaku's got City at home. And then am I forcing the transfer at that point? Yeah. I'm not sure where I'm going with it yet, to be very honest. It really is dependent on fitness.
I think in listening to you talking about it, it's not so much for the listeners necessarily what you're about to do, but it's the thought process around what you're about to do, which is immediate is to fix a problem. What is the knock-on effect on the second, third, and fourth decision that you make based off the back of that? And I think that's very similar to the situation I'm in. And I think I'm in a better situation than you from the point of view that I don't have any injuries or suspensions to worry about, bar Ben Foster, who is bench fodder. So I'm not worried about that. But I'm also not 100% sure what to do. So Sanchez in goal for me, you've just mentioned he's still the best 4.5. Why would I want to make any moves there? Trent and Shaw. I'm interested to see how Shaw plays now with the addition of Ronaldo, and is there even more attacking threat in him or not? But Newcastle and Villa are 2 of the next 3. So Shaw and Trent are locked for me. Ben White and Ayling, in the first 3 weeks, I've had 1 appearance out of the 2 of them. And it's now that I actually bought them for. So Ben White against Newcastle, followed by Ayling against Norwich. Ben White against Norwich, followed by Ayling against Newcastle. Then back to Ben White and then back to Ayling. So they're sticking for me, regardless of Ben White's price drop. And Brandon Williams is just cheap bench fodder. So I don't need to do anything with my back line at the moment. Despite having no Chelsea, that's a further down the road kind of thing for me to worry about. My midfield, Bissouma at my cheap player is fine. I've stumbled into Jota. The debate at the beginning was Tsimikas versus Jota as your third Liverpool. I ended up going with Jota in the early stages. Obviously, Tsimikas outscored him, but now with Firmino out for a little while, maybe this could be the time where Jota shines. Do we know what the latest on Jota is?
Yeah, he's a potentially
not Jota.
very good
Firmino.
explosive
You know
asset.
Firmino.
Look at his statistics and you go, shit, he should score more goals than he does.
Firmino, sorry.
No, not yet.
No, but it's more than likely he won't play this week.
I'd say it's more than likely he won't play this week. But then it's not so much just about this week, is it? It's about 5 and 6. It's what you really want. Palace at home, Brentford away is the two you really want. If Firmino's out for 3 weeks, that's enough. Yep. That's enough to make. I think if Firmino's out for 3 weeks and you're on Wildcard, you're going Jota, Salah, Trent, is my opinion. I mean, some won't go with Trent because they'll be scrimping and saving for the money and stuff. And personally, I wouldn't do that, but I get that. But yeah, if you're on Wildcard and Firmino's out for 3 weeks, it's perfect. That's what you're doing. You almost book in and go, right, Jota to say Mason Mount in 7. Yeah. For example, when Liverpool play Man City in 7, they've also got Man United in 9, and that's obviously the beginning of Chelsea's run. So you're almost booking that in.
So, yeah, I was going to say Sonny for me is definitely, if I was moving Sonny on, it would 100% be a need, not a want. A want, not a need. But I've got no reason to move him in Son at the moment. He's perfectly fine. I understand what you're saying about positioning, and he'll still get me a return or two in the coming weeks, you know. Barnes in my midfield is the only one, like you've mentioned, that is a concern because he hasn't performed. Up front, Tony, Ings, Antonio. Ings is out of his good patch. So the moves that I had on the cards were Ings to Bamford, but I can do that next week after Bamford's done with Liverpool. So I don't need to worry about that move just yet. I also have 2 million in the bank. So Barnes down gives me Ings up to Lukaku. So do I downgrade Barnes to someone really cheap, play a 4-3-3 this week, play Ayling, despite it being Liverpool, but then keep myself open to getting Lukaku for Ings instead? Do I use the 2 million that I have to go from Barnes to a Mason Mount, which I do want Chelsea midfield coverage? That keeps me covered off long term, and it'll still give me a little bit of money should I want to do Ben White to John Stones. Or try and maneuver my squad to be a 5-3-2 or a 4-3-3, because I still have Ivan Toney in there. So this 2 million in the bank and what to do with the 2 million is kind of my question here now. Do I spend it or do I not? And I'd rather not spend it, which means a sideways or downward move for Harvey Barnes. He's the one in my squad that I could move. I may just get Ings to Bamford done, to be honest with you, and see what happens with Harvey Barnes.
How much more money would you need to find to go Ings to Lukaku?
1.5. So I'd have to go 5.3 for my
so
Barnes.
that would rule you out Damari Gray. What state would you be in if you went Barnes to 4.5 mid this week?
In what sense? For my team?
Yeah.
I'd just play Luke Ayling.
Yeah.
And it would be a 4-3-3. So
White. So who are you playing
Trent,
defensively
Shaw,
as it stands this week?
White, Trent, and Shaw.
Yeah.
So I'd add in Ayling, then I'd play Salah, Jota, Son, Tony, Ings.
If you went someone like Sissoko, would you be tempted to play him against Wolves rather than play Ayling against Liverpool?
Nah.
I maybe would.
And
I maybe
I'd
would.
play. I mean, who Brighton playing? Remind me.
Well, to be honest, yeah, Basuma. Brighton are at Brentford.
So
could make a case for it.
Yeah, it'd be so exciting, James. My first 2 transfers in FPL in the 2021-22 season was I can't remember who I got rid of for Brandon Williams. Was my first transfer, and then I'd be buying a 4.5 midfielder. Exciting times.
It must mean that we made some okay selections in the first instance. I mean, one of the points is I can imagine people are listening to me talking about this kind of Martinez Pereira problem and having people like Barnes and Ings and people saying, just pull the wild card, James. And I think, well, I could get rid of all 4 of them now for a -8, which I don't overly want to do, but that would still be a preference to using the wild card. One of the reasons I don't like wild carding now is as well, there's players I've got in my squad who are not a problem now, but I think could conceivably become a problem. So in my mind, what I would like to do between now and Friday is come up with a transfer plan that gets me to that Chelsea fixture swing in the first instance to game week 7, and then kind of get the game week 6 and then reassess what I'm doing after 7. That's what I want to do in my mind at the moment. But I've got Greenwood, could become a problem. Doesn't look like it at the moment. Jack Harrison, who I've had from the start, has done nothing yet. But I know once I get to game week 5, he's a brilliant fixture swing. But if his form continues, at some point, I'm going to cut my losses on it. And is Daniel James potentially going to influence the amount of minutes he gets? And Antonio, it's no problem now, is it? But I know at some point he's getting injured because he always bloody does. So, I mean, I can't factor that in. I don't care about Antonio having tough fixtures. He'll stay. It's not a problem because we've always had that belief that he'll get a goal against even the best sides. He's been doing it for years. It's always about the fitness for him. So I've got 3 players there who I'm very happy to have at the moment that could become problems for me in the next few game weeks. And it's part that. So I see a lot of people now wildcarding with, say, Jota, Greenwood. And I think if I was wildcarding now, I'd have Jota and Greenwood. They're probably both going to become a problem for you at some point in the next few weeks. So for me, there's just not enough information yet to, okay, I've got a few problems suddenly now, but it's not something that can't be dealt with either aggressively or by just taking a moment's back and going, can Harvey Barnes return against Manchester City?
Yep.
Yeah, he can. It looks awful. Do I fancy it? No. But can he? Has he got decent fixtures afterwards? Yeah. Can I hold my nerve on it? Okay, if I look at the statistics, it doesn't look good for him. I understand that. But that's back to need versus want. I want to get rid of Harvey Barnes. Do I need to? Actually, if I survive this week, and ironically, to kind of bring Ronaldo into the conversation, the thinking for me always pre-game week 1 was I would have to survive game week 4 with no Bruno Fernandes. That was always my plan, not to pay the 12 million for Bruno because I'd only captained him once in the first 14, 15 game weeks. Now, the situation is the same, except everyone's talking about it being Ronaldo rather than Bruno Fernandes. And I'm going to have no Ronaldo this weekend. I'm going to have no Bruno Fernandes. And the simple reason for me not paying and forcing what would be at least a -8, if not a -12, for me to get Ronaldo into the team is, yes, he's the best captaincy option this weekend. Yes, I think he'll score. Everybody does. Would I captain him again for any fixture coming up soon? No. Not for weeks on end. And I'm sure many of you, and if you haven't, we highly recommend it. Mark's analysis on Black Box last week about Ronaldo being a flat track bully. Yes, he will be a great captaincy option against some of the weaker opponents. But do you want to captain him for some of the fixtures coming up? Look, when you've got Lukaku's run, you've got Salah 5 and 6, you've got Lukaku's run 7 to 11, and then you've got Kane has got a brilliant run 12 to 15. I mean, United's actual big fixture swing is Crystal Palace at home in game week 15. Harry Kane's got Norwich at home. I'm still not sure I'd be captaining Ronaldo.
No.
When that moment comes around. And that's why at the moment I'm not going to pay the money. Again, if I was on Wildcard, he'd definitely go in. I would look at it and go, yeah, I'm having him game weeks 4, 5, 6, and then I'm going to Lukaku in 7. I agree. No, I'm not sitting here saying Ronaldo's a bad pick. I'm saying I'm not going to break my team to stick the armband on him for one game week.
I think people need to understand that just because Ronaldo is possibly going to be up there as the best player in the league for the rest of this year because he's capable. I mean, I've got him pegged for 20 goals and 15 assists between now and the end of the season.
Fucking hell, Suj. I'll get him in then.
Yeah, well, the thing is, though...
Ronaldo, 15 assists. I think this player's changed, mate.
Okay, maybe 20 goals and 10 assists. But I think it's going to be high, double digits across the board in everything, right? 30 attacking returns. But being good in the league and then needing him in your FPL team are two completely different things because other players are returning as well. Now, the reason we're quite spread in terms of our budget across our team is because we've got Salah and then the jump down is to Son, whereas a lot of people have Salah and then they've got Fernandes or Lukaku or Kane or what have you, who are still that £2.5 million more. And so that does mean you have to make one other sacrifice somewhere. I actually think that in the coming weeks, and we're talking 2 to 3 weeks more than anything else, Trent may be the make way. If I can get a similar value out of a Stones or someone at 5.5, Trent might be the make way to push me into the third premium attacking asset in Ronaldo or Lukaku more than likely. I think Kane is third or fourth on the pecking order. He might be fourth even behind Fernandes. And then we'll kind of see and assess from there. At the moment, I get it. I think people want to get these players in. And if there's ever a criticism of me in FPL in the years, it's always been too slow to react rather than too fast to react. And so I don't know if sticking to my nature of being slow to react is going to be a positive or a negative. But I think in the past, it's not often been a 4 or 5 way decision. It's normally A or B. And right now, it's a B, C, D, or E kind of question, and a combination of those as well. So it is a little bit tricky. And the fixture things are still 2 or 3 weeks away. So if I can kick the can forward a little bit, I may do that. So I think thinking about it, Barnes down to something cheap to give me the money and 2 free transfers kick forward again might be the best option for me.
For me to get Ronaldo now, it would have to be a -8. I would have to sell Heung-min Son. And the player that I would want to get, Jota, I wouldn't be able to get.
Mm-hmm.
Just doesn't, I can't justify it for me. -8. And in doing so, I'm going to be taking the captaincy off of, I'm almost definitely going to go Mo Salah captaincy this week. And again, I 100%, I think Ronaldo is the best option this week. But I'm taking a -8 and I'm moving the captaincy of someone who doesn't have a bad fixture, like Liverpool can't blow Leeds away. Of course they can. So for me, it's just not worth it. It's
Manchester
just not
United
worth it personally.
Are a bit of a question mark at the moment, aren't they? Because Rashford's still not back. Jadon Sancho, they didn't pay the best part of £80 million to leave him on the bench as well. Mason Greenwood's in great form, so doesn't justify getting dropped. How they line up when everybody's fit and available will be interesting. I reckon 2 or 3 out of the 5 will have their places cemented. You'd think Ronaldo and Fernandes are cemented. Sancho, Rashford, Pogba, Greenwood,
Martial, Cavani.
Martial is so far down that list, mate.
Is he? Well, he started the last game, didn't he?
I think injuries were more to do with that than his place in the pecking order at Manchester United.
Yeah, I think the one thing just to add, which I don't see many people talking about, but I think the addition of Ronaldo has probably moved any idea of Pogba being an asset off the table. He's going to have to go back as one of the 2 in midfield deeper now, isn't he? To fit in all these attacking. I mean, as it looks at the moment, it's difficult for me to visualize how Edison Cavani is getting any minutes this season.
But why does it mean that Pogba has to sit deeper? Because we were talking about a 4-1-4-1 with Pogba and Fernandes as 2 10s.
That is an option.
Players. And then Ronaldo up top. I mean, Rashford on the left.
But Solskjaer hasn't done it yet, has he?
No, we won't know yet. And I think that's what it comes back down to for everybody to bear in mind. We don't know.
Yeah, I can, like with Greenwood, I can see a problem coming. But again, if I was on Wildcard now, I'd have him. And I'm definitely not getting rid of him at the moment till at least the tougher fixtures begin to come round. Or I kind of switch it with someone like Mason Mount for Chelsea's fixture run. I'd definitely have him at the moment. I'd definitely have Jota. And I know that the 2 of them are probably going to be problems, but explosive enough that actually, I mean, there's a case to say that Greenwood so far has covered off Fernandes. And there's already talk of people saying, look, if Firmino was out long term, is the 5 million saving Salah to Jota even worth it? If you go Jota Greenwood, then very feasible to have like Ronaldo and Lukaku up front, isn't it?
Chucking Kane for fun and games as well. Why don't you?
You
imagine that as a front line?
You can't have the 3 like that. I don't think personally. You've got to cripple the team to do that. And I just don't think it's worthwhile. Similarly, like in saying Harry Kane's case, you wouldn't stick the armband on Harry Kane to at least game week 12. So like it's just, to me, it's the same principle as towards buying Ronaldo at the moment. I don't know why you would. Like I don't believe anybody's wildcarding at the moment going Harry Kane, even though Palace away this weekend's a good fixture. You've got an alternative with Son, and we've spoken about pros and cons of Sonny at the moment. I can see me selling Son, and I can see it being regretful because of as much the value that he's at as much as him. And I know that if he stays fit, he'll get 200 plus points, which is exactly what I'd want at his valuation. There is even a case to say if I hold him through, there's a case to say that I'd possibly want Son more than Salah, between game week 7 and 8, for example. It might even be a case of coming off Salah for a few weeks.
It's funny
Can't see
because
that,
we're not recommending, it's not that we're not recommending, we're not making the moves to these players. Yet at the same time, I'm saying to every listener, I probably will make the move to some of these players at some point, imminently. And so with that in mind, James, do you think now we're about to see a 4 or 5 week period where we start really moving away from the template because people have so many different combinations and options within their teams? And so we'll start to see a bit of a spread within mini leagues and stuff. Because I can see that already, the way we're tossing it up. And even with the questions that we've got that people are asking, they're about players that we don't own, but I still think they're good options that they're talking about, which can only be a good thing if we don't have the template and there's so many different options on the table that are coming now.
The more premiums in this game, the better. You know, one of the things I've often argued, you drink the fruit shoot. How cute.
It's a long story. Before we get into the Q&A, I'm going to have a mini rant about something.
All right, you do that. We'll come back to it. One of my gripes has been players underpriced, right? So, you know, I think when players like Jota and Greenwood are showing what they're showing at the moment, I feel like they're 9 to 10 million players, really. They're not the price, but we understand why, because they're the rotation risks, etc. The more premiums in this game, great, because it doesn't make players like, you can't have the attitude that Mo Salah is never leaving your team, for example. I don't think you can't, even with Ronaldo, you can't have that attitude that Ronaldo's going in, he's never leaving my team. Like, you, in principle, you can have that as an idea, but honestly, you need to keep an open mind about this. And part of the reason, what you can't do with it, this is now different to what you and I have experienced in the last 4 seasons covering podcasts on FPL, because now we need to look at strategies where we are looking at going, yeah, Ronaldo to Lukaku in 7, yeah, Lukaku to Kane in 12. That kind of has to be in the thought process longer term now. What that means is your other picks are more important. They have to be more secure and they have to be better. You can't take as much chances with the shit picks and someone else is going to give you a problem and stopping you that Ronaldo to Lukaku move in game week 7, if that's what you want to do. So it's more important that we get those other picks right. And I think they've got to be of a longer term nature, which is why it's completely understandable that, like, Bradley Parker, who's coming on Clash of Correspondence this week, he's getting harassed. He's getting harassed night and day. Who's the best Wolves defender? Who's the best Wolves defender? And that's because someone wants to put a Wolves defender in there for the next 11 game weeks and not worry about it. And I get that. It's sensible planning to look at that and go, yeah, that's an amazing run of fixtures. If I had to play a Wolves defender every week for the next 11 game weeks, that's okay. So that's why those picks are coming to the fore even more and stuff now as well. It's really important to get the other parts of your team right and not be sweating on people with a, oh yeah, I'm gonna have Duffy as my third defender. You're not. He's coming out the team soon. This shit's gonna become a wake-up call for you, and then you're gonna be dancing between, oh, am I playing Brandon Williams or Daniel Amati this week and stuff like that. So that's why I want to get people like Rudiger in rather than going, it's like Christensen absolutely is worth the saving on Rudiger if he plays.
Yeah,
I'd just rather get Rudiger in and know he's going to play 9 out of 10 and I can forget about it. And I'm never bothered about Chelsea's fixtures. And he plays for me every week. Forget about it. Done. Fix another problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. It does. Let's get into some of these questions that we've had on Twitter then, James. And we'll see if
do you want to tell everyone about your story first?
I'll give you my rant.
Give us the rant. We love a rant.
But yeah, I'll be interested when we get into the Twitter questions if the questions that people are asking are about the non-premium players, because then it would mean that their mindset is around how do I sort out the rest of my team, because of 3 or 4 that are premium that I can jump between. I can save my transfers for that then. The reason I'm drinking a fruit shoot, James,
go on in.
Remnants of McDonald's.
That doesn't sound like a rant.
No, as in right. McDonald's Monopoly. Have you ever won anything on McDonald's Monopoly?
Maybe like a free burger or something like that. Free fries, like something
years
like that.
ago. I can't remember the last time I ever even bothered with it.
Are you in McDonald's every day? We can get you counselling.
No, I don't. This is the thing, right? But it seems to me like the most pointless marketing thing that anyone does anywhere, because I don't know anyone that wins anything or gives a shit about it or collects the little stickers that they waste printing and putting on all the burgers and the bottles and whatever else they do. I don't get McDonald's monopoly. I want we have like 4.5 million listeners to this podcast, James, roughly, give or take. One of the you listeners must have won something on McDonald's monopoly. Tweet at Planet FPL Pod at Suj and Shah, because I want to find someone that's won something from McDonald's monopoly, because I don't think it exists.
Don't send us you won your free apple pie.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Proper shit.
Proper.
You won the car or something like
Every time I see McDonald's monopoly, I'm like, why did they do this shit? Because it just seems like
presumably someone does win the car, don't they?
I think there was a TV documentary about how it was all fixed once. I can't remember. It must be.
Was it a major scam in America, wasn't it? I think that's a docu I've been meaning to watch, actually.
Oh, fair play. But in the meantime, we're busy watching documentaries about Bury FC, which we'll talk to you about at the end of the show, previewing the content for the rest of the week. Q&A. Now that I've got this McDonald's monopoly off my chest.
Wasn't much of a rant, really, mate.
The
rest of us are more ranting about the fact. Did you choose the fruit shoot? Was one of your kids left out?
They have nothing else in stock.
What are you talking about? We didn't have Coke or nothing.
Nothing. It was Oasis, Sprite, or Fruit Shoot, or hot drinks.
How does McDonald's not have Coke?
Brexit.
Milkshake.
That's a
milkshake.
Pod for another day, mate. That's a pod for another day. The supply chain issues caused in the UK as a result of COVID and Brexit.
You should have voted to remain, Suj.
We'll talk about it another day. It's genuinely going to be a difficult Christmas. No drinks in McDonald's. Let's get into some FPL questions because they are more important. I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up. FPL telling. This is a question mainly for Suj, but how do you feel West Ham's form and performances will fare once the Europa League kicks in? And will they prioritise a good, strong run in Europe? It's interesting that, it kicks off on the 16th, so we'll find out early next week. The first game, middle of next week, is against Zagreb away, early kickoff. All I would say is this, James, you might agree. Fabianski, Ben Johnson, Dawson, Diop, Masuaku, Noble, Kral, Yarmolenko, Lanzini, Vlasic, and a striker.
Colton Cole.
If we could drag him out, maybe. I think that team will be good enough to get us through the group.
I think that team will be playing Tottenham in the last 16 of the Europa Conference League, mate.
I think we'll get through the group. Or put it this way, it's enough that we don't need to. I don't think everyone will play every Europa League game, but I also don't think we'll make 11 changes.
No.
So take out Noble and play Rice for the first 60 minutes.
I think
play Bowen in one game and Ben Rama in another. There's enough depth to rotate half the team to keep it moving in the Europa League. So
what you got to remember is as well in the case of West Ham's case, if we take, Antonio's the important case, right, from an FPL perspective. If we take West Ham as an example, and even take Antonio as an example, what you got to consider is this: Mikel Antonio wants to play in Europa League.
Of course.
Mikel Antonio does not want to get told, you're not playing in Europa League, we need to rest your hamstrings, which would be the right decision for the football club. Is actually for him not to play in that group stage at all, because you can probably negotiate it without him. But he's going to want to play in it. And it'll be the same for every other member of that squad who's, other than that, say Kurt Zouma, who's just joined you and stuff, haven't played European football for at least a couple of years. They're all going to want to play in this competition. So the sensible way to treat it is you go, right, so look, we're going to play Rice or Souček in one of the first two games, and we're going to play the other one in the second group game. So everybody gets a little break now and again, and you mix and match, and you keep 5 or 6 of the starting 11 constantly on a rotation and plays in the competition and feels a part of it. And obviously, from a fan perspective for your guys as well, like, you'd be gutted if I said to you now, you're out in the group stage, having not been in Europe for all this time. You want to do well in it, right?
Not at the sacrifice of a bottom half.
The sacrifice of what? Finishing 6th again or something?
It's more around consistency. And just, I think long-term success is built on consistency, not on one season flash in the pans. And it takes year after year of 6th, 7th, 6th, 7th, 6th, 7th to then be able to go 4th, 5th, 4th, 5th, and so on. So, You're right, and I think the majority of fans probably do think like that. I'm probably in the minority where I want to enjoy it. If we don't get out of the group stage, I'm not going to be that bothered, to be honest with you.
Can I just say that
want to get into it
I
again
reckon
next year.
the majority of the listeners, his ownership is now up to 50% in FPL.
Who, Antonio?
Yeah, the majority of that's mad, isn't it? But then he's got like 40 FPL points already, mate. The majority of the listeners are going to have Antonio in their squad, right?
Yeah.
Make this a rule now. Any week there's European football, you don't make a transfer till at least midnight on a Thursday.
Yeah, fair play.
If you've got Antonio, wait. I think what we analysed on one of our Tottenham podcasts, Suj, is actually the squad is a little bit stronger when you look at it, exactly what you highlighted, than actually we thought. It should be okay to negotiate. But I think you'll be playing mix and match jobs. And then once you're through, then yeah. The other thing that's different, and it's worth remembering in the Europa League and the Europa Conference League that's different this year is if you win the group, you skip a round.
Right.
So there's a last 32. And there's a last 16. The winners of the group go directly to the last 16. The runners-up go into the last 32. And it's the same in the Europa Conference League as well. So even when you think you're through, you may find yourself going right to the ends. Because listen, if you put a stronger team out in match day 6 of the Europa League, and that gets you to skip 2 games in February, that's better actually, isn't it?
Yeah. Since when did they start? You need a university degree to understand how the knockout and group stages work in UEFA tournaments. It's pretty stupid.
It's what I'm here for, sweetheart.
I'll get you the certificate. FPL Quinner.
I really don't want a fucking UEFA certificate, thank you.
It's the Planet FPL pod degree in UEFA competition formats.
Yeah, who did the degree with me? Man-child. I didn't have to study for much, did I?
FPL Quinner wants to know verdict on Trent as a midfielder. I guess this is coming from obviously his different role for England.
We'll cover that very quickly because it's the completely non-FPL question. But I didn't watch the game yesterday, so it would be inappropriate for me to comment. I'm not surprised it's been tried. It's something a lot of people believe that it will go on and become a midfielder eventually. I think it's very different. You have to have your back to the play a lot more. And I don't think he's a player who likes it. And I think he'll need a lot of development to become, the next Philip Lahm or Josh Kimmich or something who can just naturally kind of play between the two positions. He's definitely best as a right back at the moment for me.
Yeah. We have David H, FPL_Gills, who says, what are your thoughts on Adam Armstrong? Is he a viable option as a third striker?
Viable, yes. And we get, obviously, with each week that goes by, we're getting closer to the point where Southampton might become a serious interest for us. I think West Ham, Man City, and Chelsea inside the next 4, and the fixture I'm missing is Wolves, suggests to me I wouldn't be in a rush to do it. And it's more about that transfer obviously accommodates you having another player, is obviously what the thinking is. It's not really about Adam Armstrong. It's about, I want another player, and Adam Armstrong's part of the deal. Yeah, he could do okay. I mean, I said last week that I thought he's a player who, in theory, could score in any game because he wants to get in behind all the time, and the pass has just got to be right. Southampton are a moody team. Like, they could lose to anybody. They could lose at home to Norwich. Easy. But they're capable of surprising teams because they're still decent going forward. And I think, yeah, Armstrong is not the worst shout. You just have to know, I think he's one of them. If you go there, you'd be staying there for a while.
Yeah, I agree with what James has said there. For me, I don't like much below Armstrong's value at 6 million.
I don't like anything below it.
Well, yeah, okay. That's a better way of putting it, to be honest with you. So for me, I've got Ivan Toney at the moment, and he's going to stick around for 2 more game weeks. I've kept him this long. I'm not going to sell him before Brighton and Wolves. And Adam Armstrong has West Ham and then Manchester City. So it makes sense. But post that game week 5, if I'm still rolling my 2 transfers, I want to find 0.4 or 0.5, then Toney to Armstrong would be one way of doing it. And then my third striker is not absolute dross bench fodder, which I don't want. We talked, James, about making sure the rest of your squad is fairly secure at that level. I do think Adam Armstrong's locked in that Southampton team. He's not going anywhere. So for me, it's a decent shout as a third striker. And come game week 6, every chance he will be.
Have you given any thought to Gana Jimenez this week?
No. And there's one reason why, James. Bamford.
You'd prefer that, yeah?
Next week.
Bamford's
fixtures get better next week.
my intention pre-season, if you'd said, what do you want to do game week 4? I'd have looked at it and said possible Arsenal entry, which doesn't appeal as much now, although I could still go to Ben White. And the thinking would have always been Ings to Jimenez, would have always been the thinking. And I think if I could make that transfer for free, I would do it. Raul Jimenez is not a player I would ever want to take a hit for, because I just don't feel like he's a player who's ever going to get more than the one return, even with all those good fixtures. So I always feel like it's a transfer that could just wait a week till it's free. He's not completely out my thinking though, Jimenez. He's the Wolves attacker I'd go for, personally. I'd pay the extra for him over a Traore or something.
You've said it on Twitter and you've said it on the show before. Do you really believe it that things are going to come into place for Wolves? Because they've not scored a single goal, yet they've had a ton of chances. And if you were really a gambling man, you would look at it and say the odds are stacked in Wolves' favour now. They're playing the right type of football. They're playing attacking football. Traore's in the team causing chaos alongside him. Goal Jimenez, assist Traore is waiting to happen. You're right. He's at a price drop to 7.4. So he's that $500,000 cheaper than Patrick Bamford is at the moment. And their fixture run is great. So it's relative, right? No one's saying all Wolves are going to challenge for the Champions League. No, but I would have a bet with you on what I've seen so far. When Wolves come to play Liverpool in game week 15, they'll be playing them as a top half team. Okay, let's have a look at Patrick Bamford. So he has roughly similar in terms of the length of good fixtures in the run. Let's call it up to end of game week 10 before they walk into Leicester and Tottenham. So game week 10, which is 6-7 game weeks from now, who scores more points, Jimenez or Bamford?
Between now and 10? I think Jimenez. But I think it'd be very close.
Yeah.
Very close.
In it. And probably one big haul, one of them going off in one particular game might be the difference between...
Bamford, I guess it's possibly as well. I know that if I go Bamford, that's the third Leeds player.
Yeah.
And that would mean 3 Leeds players and Rafinha's not one of them. And I don't think I'd be comfortable with that.
I've only got the one at the moment, so I'm okay with that. FPL _ wants to know about Harry Kane. How does he fit into Nuno's tactics? I mean, Harry Kane's a striker, right? So he fits up the top.
I was messaging with Mark from Black Box the other day, saying like, well done on the show and that. And he was asking me my opinion on Kane as well. And all I said to Mark was, don't worry about Kane. He went mental under Mourinho. If he went mental under Mourinho, he's capable of going mental under anyone, right? So very difficult to say on what I've seen in 2 games, because those who perhaps listened to my streams last Friday will know I'd mentioned about Tottenham played a 4-1-4-1 in the second leg in Europe. And I was really concerned for Son. Now, it was back to the 4-3-3 in the league game against Watford. So far, I've seen 2 games with 2 different systems. So it's very difficult to place it. What you can certainly say is how Harry Kane will play for Tottenham positionally is going to be very similar to how he's always played. It's not going to make a lot of difference. And in front of goal, he's one of the best on the planet. Don't overthink it.
John _ Jacob wants to know, is Ronaldo a bad triple captain punt for his debut?
I would not be triple captain. Very, very simply, the majority of people in this game are going to be triple captain Romelu Lukaku this season. And that's for the simple reason that Chelsea are going to have 2 games postponed in December for the Club World Cup. And at some point in January or February, Chelsea are going to have a double game week.
Yep.
That's it.
Mikey U, FPL _ Mikey, plans to get Ronaldo with 2 free transfers. And the move is Danny Ings to Ronaldo and downgrading Bruno. The option from Bruno is one of Rafinha or Torres for free, or Jota for a -4, but because he needs to move Tsimikas on as well.
Oh, if I could get Ronaldo for free, I'd get him in this week.
But if you had to get Ronaldo for free, Bruno, where would you go? Rafinha or Torres? Or would you then take a -4 and then move on Tsimikas and get Jota instead?
No, see, that's part of the problem. I mean, the transfer, if I look at my squad, if I didn't have the 3 Liverpool players and didn't have the Martinez and Pereira problems, Son to Jota, Ings to Ronaldo, is so straightforward for 2 free transfers. I would definitely do that. But obviously I can't do it because of Jota and I've got 2 other problems. So it becomes very complicated. I would not be selling Bruno Fernandes for a hit this week. I see a lot of people doing that. Would not do it. What did you start with him for? I realised that you started with him when Ronaldo wasn't there, but did you watch the game against Leeds? And did he need free kicks and penalties in that fixture against Leeds? Playing one of the weakest teams defensively in the league. But Bruno, think of it like this: is one game week. Can Bruno Fernandes outscore Cristiano Ronaldo this weekend? Yes or no?
Easy. Any week.
Well, exactly.
He can outscore Salah any week.
Exactly. I think Ronaldo's the best captaincy option this week. And after Ronaldo, if Lukaku's not fit, it's Bruno Fernandes. So, I mean, if you can move it for free and you get the structure of your team right, I completely get that. Would I sell Bruno Fernandes this week from -4? No.
Yeah.
No.
Roulette FPL. Who are the best assets who haven't had any attacking returns or been the unluckiest? I mean, assets, just put the whole Wolves team, well, Jimenez and the Wolves team there potentially are up there. Is anyone else that's caught your eye that has been unlucky and could have returned that hasn't so far?
Been unlucky? That's tough to say. Riyad Mahrez springs to mind. I mean, you've had returns, but not what you were hoping for with the benches, I think, from what's happened. I feel like my Ricardo Pereira pick's been so unlucky. It's desperately unlucky for him to get an injury, because I think I'd have kept him staying there for a while.
You've had some points, mate.
Listen, Mason Greenwood has been brilliant for everyone. As I said last week, the 2 goals he scored in the last 2 games have been jammy as, right? It's 20-odd points there on 2 fluky goals, basically, or at least goals that should have been dealt with better by goalkeepers. I think you'd have to say the Wolves boys in terms of unlucky so far with their returns. Yeah, that they would be right at the top of the list. Go for it.
There, that no one will have picked up, although our friend FPL General did when he does his kind of eye test stuff, was Soufal. Based on the game, I've watched West Ham every single game. Based on how high up he's played and how involved he's been in the games, the stats will not bear testament to it, because he hasn't been swinging in crosses or creating chances, but he's been there or thereabouts to create chances and assists, and he's taken some set pieces as well. When I look at it in terms of the amount of crosses and chances he's creating on stats, is way less than what I would have thought it would have been having watched the games. And I reckon his attacking returns are only around the corner. Not only that, I think we're going to sort out our defense soon. He's only got the 1 assist so far against Leicester, but I think he's got more on the way. At 5 million, I think Soufal.
Can you hear that sound?
Not been unlucky.
That was the sound of all Soufal owners selling Soufal.
Not unlucky, but his stats don't match the performances. So I think returns are on the way.
All right.
Right. I'm going to skip a couple of Ronaldo questions, James, because we've covered him.
Please tell me someone hasn't put in the question something like, "Shall I buy Ronaldo?"
Jarvo wants to know. I'm sure you'll cover Brazil versus Argentina anyway, but what on earth does that mean for Premier League players returning?
Honestly,
on top of that, Tom wanted to know: have you seen what's happening in the Brazil versus Argentina game? Why did they wait 5 minutes?
I don't know, and it's not all out in the wash yet. Like, I was reading an article by Jack Pitt-Brooke, who's the Tottenham correspondent and the Athletic, and I kind of closed with saying, and I still don't know when they're coming back to Tottenham. Like, there isn't an answer. Now, Romero and Lo Celso obviously doesn't matter from FPL. It does if you're like me with a Martinez owner, because it has crossed my mind to go, I'm missing Chelsea away. Could I just go 10 players this week? But I'm missing 2 game weeks and knowing that value will fucking die off him as well in the process. And then he's got Manchester United away afterwards as well. No, he'd have to go, wouldn't he? That's a real mistake that I started with Emi Martinez. No, I don't know the situation. And I mean, there's things like, did you see that? Was it in Guinea, the situation last night with the Moroccan players? They can't get out of the hotel and stuff because there's tried to be a coup with the army there. And
oh wow, no,
yeah. So
that, but I'm going to be looking at that.
There's don't COVID as well. I mean, Ronaldo's had to come back and isolate for 5 days, and apparently that's it's nothing to do where he's played and stuff. It's to do with the UK doesn't recognise the vaccination he's had. So is this going to be a problem in game week 8 as well?
That's another Brexit problem, James. It's because we're not part of the EU in terms of the recognition of the vaccines.
So we're hearing about Ronaldo, right? How many other players are there like that we don't know about? that potentially have been overseas and they're coming back from somewhere and the UK doesn't like their vaccination and says, no, actually, you got to isolate for 5 days. Is there a load of players going to come out like that we don't know about currently? I cannot, like I said, if you made early transfers and went early to get the value, I accept that and you've done it. But honestly, I told one person last night, someone said, I can't put the app down. I said, put the app down, log out for 4 days. Forget about it completely. Honestly, please don't make a transfer in the next 72 hours or so. At least get to Thursday or something.
Craig Kemp from Man on Pod, shout out to Craig and those guys doing good work there as well, wants to know if the 4.5 million defender bracket is now an avoid for the foreseeable. Ayling is one of the only ones with limited appeal, and it's likely that game week 4 and 7 wildcards probably won't own any defenders at this price point. And we talked about it earlier in the season where everybody that was viable at that price, the Fofanas of the world and so on, all ended up with red flags and it was a disaster zone.
Yeah, we did a pod on it between game week 1 and 2, didn't we, about the budget defenders, and the kind of conclusion we came to was there weren't as many good options there as it appeared at first.
There will be.
First look.
There will be at some point when they all become fit again, but they're just not aren't now.
If I was wildcard, one thing I would say, if I was wildcard in fourth, if I was going 3 at the back, 4th and 5th defender would definitely be Livramento and Brandon Williams, and there would be no negotiating on that. Possibly if Ben White drops to 4.3 before the weekend, you could make a case. But in terms of the 4.5s, I think, Ayling, Connor Cody, Max Kilman at Wolves, possibly. Llorente at Leeds, actually, might show himself as an alternative. And other than Ben White, no, I wouldn't look anywhere else in terms of that price value for other teams. Someone just smacked me in the back of the head, said, what about Tottenham? Next question, please, Suj.
Davinson Sanchez is red flags, mate.
Davinson Sanchez is not going to play in game week 4. He's probably not going to play in game week 5 as it stands. And guess what? You're probably going to be lucky that it probably means Japhet Tanganga plays again this week. And then that might be it. Now we've bought Emerson Royal.
Yeah. Rob Pick on wildcard at the moment. Aside from Antonio, who do you believe is the best striker under 8 million? Bamford, Jimenez, or another?
Well, under 8 million. I can't say Danny Ings then, can I?
No.
For me, if I was buying one this week, it would be Jimenez. And I think that's simplistic. I mean, it's a lot of people thinking it. There's that one moment, I keep speaking about it, that moment at top, when he played against us in game week 2, where he had the chance to head it at the back post and took a couple of steps backwards to think about volleying it. And that's the biggest thing that's put me off, is that one moment. Because otherwise, his statistics are that he's having plenty, getting shots away and stuff. It's not like he's not involved in the games. And you have to remember he's played 3 tough teams. So even the statistics will kind of back up going for Jimenez at the moment, and that he's underperforming, and it will come now the fixtures are easing. That's where I'd be going. I would personally suggest I'd be going Jimenez over Bamford.
Yeah. I think the other thing to bear in mind there, the reason I'm like, squirming in my seat there, is just thinking about the alternatives. So, for example, Rafinha instead of Bamford still gives me attacking Leeds coverage that I would be more comfortable with than Traore
or
versus Jimenez, or any of them, to be fair. So I feel like if you still want to cover yourself off on Leeds, you can with Rafinha, and you can't with Wolves with a Traore or what have you. It's riskier. It's not, mate,
there's loads of people want to buy Traore, particularly this week.
It's riskier, I think, is more than that you can.
All of the Wolves guys, if you look at their data, is going to make you want to buy them on what you've seen on what you've seen with your eyes this week as well. Just know in the case of Traore, all that space he gets to run at the back 4, you ain't going to get that space like at Watford with a Tebo and stuff. It's not to say he can't do it, but in terms of the opening space, it's going to be different. Teams, that's not happening here. Yeah. Nah, teams are going to play differently against. You got teams playing against Wolves now are going to be thinking we need to stop that, rather than other teams going to play Wolves and thinking we need to beat these. It's change of mindset now. In an odd way, Traore for me, it stands out more in the bigger games.
Yeah. Barry Allen, I have no West Ham players. I'm thinking Ings to Antonio this week. No brainer, I guess. I'd get it done. It depends if you've got no other problems to fix in your team and you're happy with everything else. I mean, Antonio is still 7.9.
It'll be 8. It'll be 8 before you blink, Suj.
Yeah, exactly. But it's still a bit cheaper than Ings. You can maybe bank that.
Yeah, look, if you're in a position where Antonio now in a position that he's he's going to start really fucking up. Well, he has already. He's going to start really hurting. So if you've got the luxury of being able to make that transfer this week, yeah, that's straightforward.
Yeah, come on, Barry. Let's get Antonio to 50%.
It's boring because
ownership.
you're just pushing him above the 50% ownership, but it's the right thing to say is, yeah, make the transfer.
Yeah. He needs 0.1 more to get to 50%. And then
I cannot believe
to give us a dance celebration to get.
I cannot believe that anybody will wildcard without Mikel Antonio.
Yeah.
Everybody can make a case, pros and cons, Ronaldo's, even Salah's, Lukaku's. You make pros and cons. I cannot make any con for not having Antonio at the moment. Even you could say, oh my God, it's Man United afterwards in game week 5. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. He's being everybody's wildcard team.
Amber Edmond wants to know, have either of you been randomly recognized in public yet? I think listeners need a code word to say to you if you're spotted. I haven't. Have you?
Yeah, I've told these stories on Patreon ones. I don't want to embarrass anyone too much publicly.
Mothercare, you've told us about Mothercare.
The Mothercare one, that was blinding. Yeah. A few times in the pub and twice actually watching England. I guess because we was in the editors tab as well in the summer. But yeah, code name generally is you James. That tends to work quite well actually. So just stick with that. It's fine.
James. Potentially there. Just stick with names to start with. Timo and Drogs. This is a good question. Suj James, how viable is it to have 2 premiums from the same team, Bruno and CR7, Mane and Salah, or do you think it's ever viable? Is it over investment in one team? I actually think if it's affordable, it's a good strategy. The number of times you think about Kane and Son both scoring over 200 points, Mane and Salah both scoring over 200 points. I mean, if a team's good and scoring goals, someone's got to get the assist for the goal. And when you get a double act that seem to click, you really can clean up. And I think it's something that doesn't become an option in FPL often. And even when it does, I don't think people often do it. Last year, I didn't see that many people doubling up on Son and Kane. The year before, it would have been the year before, Mane and Salah. I don't think people doubled up massively. And I don't think a lot of people will double up Bruno and CR7.
I actually think there's scope for this more than normal. And I think that's because some of the captaincy coming up is so obvious. So, for example, and I'm not suggesting anyone does this, but if you've got Bruno this week, and I'm kind of saying don't sell him for a hit, but you could still go off this week, and you think, I want to come off next week. I know I should downgrade to perhaps sort of Mount or Jota or something like that. But let's say Firmino's back. You want to hold, you don't want to go too far away from Fernandes. Well, you could go Salah and Mane for 2 game weeks if you know you're definitely putting the captaincy on Salah. Yeah. Why not? I mean, looking at game week 15 wildcard, how many other teams are going to be able to get Ronaldo, Fernandes, and Sancho together? Why not? I mean, is there any week for about 6-7 game weeks there where I'm not going to captain Ronaldo? Probably not. So because you know that you're going to do that, say if you know you've got a plan where, those are my captaincy. If I'm definitely going Ronaldo for 4 game weeks in a row or something, of course, that opens up the possibility of going Fernandes more. Then, should Ronaldo get injured, you're still on the club that you want from the captaincy perspective, right? So, actually, I think it's more viable than people realise, actually. I think it's okay.
Yeah, I agree. And people are doing it with other clubs now as well. You see the Ben Rama and Antonio double up. Ooh. Nice
fly wasp.
It's a wasp, James.
Nice, brilliant.
Find his way out of the room that I'm recording.
Oh, so just on your head.
I think Ben Rama and Antonio, Rafinha and Bamford.
Completely different. We're talking about the premiums here, aren't we?
Yeah, but doubling up on 2 attacking players from one team is viable. I think people like to spread their risk sometimes.
I'm sure loads of people had Kane and Son together for certain periods last season, right?
What's your
I wouldn't consider that top level. So, I think with Chelsea, the only premium is Lukaku, right? With United, you've got Fernandes. You could make a case, maybe Sancho, but Fernandes and Ronaldo as a double up work. Salah and Mane at Liverpool as a double up. We're talking about having 2 premiums together here. Manchester City, you can't do it. It's only KDB, really. Yeah. So it's good. Is it viable to go Salah and Mane? Well, for a short period over the next couple of weeks, it might be. And Fernandes and Ronaldo, Like, if you've got both this weekend, great. And I think from game week 14, 15 onwards, it's very viable to have both of them again.
FPL Pyrie says, what are your thoughts on Teemu Pukki as an option for the next few game weeks? I'm thinking he's a good option. But or is it worth dropping down to 4.5 million and firing the money in elsewhere?
Let's change the question up a bit then. Would you rather buy Pukki or Armstrong?
I'd rather buy Armstrong.
So would I.
Just leave it there at 6 million. There's a 0.1 difference.
I think
don't know if affordability is.
What's definitely attractive about Norwich is they too have a good fixture run up until game week 14. Right? You can say whatever you like about Arsenal, but it's a difficult fixture this week. Everton away in game week 6 is also difficult. We've got Chelsea away in game week 9. But all the other fixtures up to game week 14 are very nice, actually. And that's why Pukki's a name you're going to hear more of in the next couple of weeks. I just think if I had to make that move now and be comfortable knowing it's a player and position I'm probably going to want to leave for a while, I'd probably go Armstrong. Although, I mean, Pukki's fixtures between now and 14 are definitely better than Armstrong's on the whole. Yeah. So, I think I'd still go Armstrong, like you. Because it's Norwich and Southampton is more the point, I think.
Yeah, definitely that is part of my thinking as well. I like what I've seen from Adam Armstrong. I'm yet to be sold on Norwich. Even though the number of Norwich fans that I do know are very confident and very bullish about the work they've done and the season starts now type mindset, I still would rather see it from Norwich before I go to Teemu Pukki rather than Adam Armstrong. Ketan Chopra, James, he says, how do you, or anyone for that matter, maintain the fine line between being stubborn versus giving an extra game week to your original thought process?
I think need versus want.
That's exactly the answer.
Like, just should we rename this
podcast, James? Need versus want.
Well, no, because we've called podcasts that before, but it's like, is it a transfer I need to make or is it a transfer I want to make? Like, I need to get rid of Emi Martinez this week. That has to be my number one thing that I do as a priority. Whatever I do over the next 4 days or so, Martinez has to go. I want to get Ronaldo. Do I need to? It's going to cost me a lot. It's going to cost me 8 points just to get there. So, then I have to factor that in and go, no, I don't. If Ronaldo had a brilliant run of fixtures, if Ronaldo had the fixtures that United have from 15, like now, I'd take a -12 to get him in. I just don't think it's worth it beyond this game week in the short to medium term, personally. So need versus want. Just sit back and ask yourself that before you think, because everybody has that rage, mate. I've got to get rid of him. It's doing my brain in. Like, I want to sell Harvey Barnes at the moment. I want to sell Harvey Barnes. Do I need to? It's not the biggest problem that I have. And can Harvey Barnes return against Manchester City, as I asked you towards the start of the show? Yes. Does he have 3 good fixtures after Manchester City? Yes. Is it a need or is it a want? Well, if I get to the point where there are no needs, then I can use the want, can't I?
Does Ademola Lookman take Harvey Barnes' place?
I think that's a strange signing, personally.
Yeah, I'm not so convinced about that one as well. We have a question from Martin from Manon as well. Is Ferran Torres the gem he seems to be? And how do you see KDB and Foden returning, affecting Torres from injury? It's a tricky one. I would love to buy a Ferran Torres right now.
I think what happens with Ferran Torres might be dependent on what happens in the next period with Jack Grealish. We've seen Grealish as more of a left winger in the last couple. That's not what he was bought for. That's not where he played against Tottenham in game week 1. So if Grealish is going to be utilised as a left winger, I think very good news for Ferran Torres, personally. If Grealish is going to go and play as 1 or 2 behind, and we assume that Guardiola loves Gundogan and he's not going to suddenly bomb him out the team, then I think, we're looking at De Bruyne as false 9, and we're looking at City playing 2 high forwards in wide areas, like Jesus as the wide right, for example. Arguably most suitable for it on the left would be Raheem Sterling again. You've got Phil Foden to reintegrate into this as well. Phil Foden can play false nine, can't he? We know that. Bernardo Silva can. In fact, we know Gundogan can. Anyone could play that false nine role. I think KDB and Foden are both back into training this week. I think in the bigger, more high-profile games, we can expect to see them play with a De Bruyne or a Foden type figure as the central forward who is basically allowed to go and play where he wants. I think in some of the weaker games, which is probably the ones where you want Ferran Torres the most, like Southampton at home in game week 5 and Burnley at home in game week 8, yeah, I think we probably will see Ferran Torres up front through the middle. But I think with the fixtures that City have got coming up, I don't actually think there's enough of them fixtures for it to be a priority. I think I mentioned like Jota and Greenwood on Wildcard, right? It'd be very easy to have Ferran Torres. Suddenly you got 3 players there who are mass rotation risk. Maybe not at this minute, but in a couple of weeks, I don't think you could go all 3 of them, for example. And right now, someone definitely will. And on paper, it looks amazing. It's going to become a problem. The one good thing about all 3 of them players is you can get off them. Like there are cheaper players like your Rafinhas and the stuff that you can come down to, no doubt about it. I can't see me going for Torres yet.
No, agreed. To wrap the show, James, we've got a really good question from FTLOL Pod, and I think we should do this together.
You want to answer it at the same time, or you want me to read the question? I can't say.
We will come up with the answer as a combined list. Which 5 footballers, dead or alive, would you have as your dream dinner party guest? So both of us together are hosting a dinner party, the Planet FPL dinner party. We're allowed to bring 5 footballers, dead or alive. Who would you invite? Who would you bring?
Pele?
Yeah. Just seems like he'd have good stories to tell.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking about some of the other nutters I'm bringing to this party.
Yeah. Maradona?
Pele can come and bring the Viagra and the girls afterwards, can't he? Maradona.
Yeah.
I think the combination of the amazing player and the amazing manager would make me want to say Johan Cruyff.
Yeah.
George Best.
Oh, he'd bring the booze.
Well, at least Pele's got the Viagra, hasn't he?
Pele's got the Viagra. I don't. Well,
and
yeah.
I think for modern day, Messi for me.
Yeah, I don't.
Mind you, if we invite Ronaldo, there's enough Viagra for the rest of us.
He's a bit boring, Messi. I think he'd be boring as a dinner party guest. You need someone with a bit of life, someone who's the life and soul of the party.
Just be great to meet Messi, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Play the theme tune to him as he comes around, mate.
Yeah, I think. Who else was particularly wild though?
I mean, look, Jimmy Greaves, Paul Gascoigne. I mean,
Roy Keane. In case we got into
so many people. There's so many people. I think there's stories you could get off people. I'd want to know stories about bungs and stuff. Get George Graham round, find out what really happened with the bungs and stuff. Terry Venables would be. Eltel's got to have some stories, isn't he?
Harry Redknapp. He's the type. Harry Redknapp's got so many stories, and I've heard so many stories, and he's still got more stories that we haven't heard as well as good old Harry. I wouldn't mind a bit of Harry Redknapp potentially. It'd be quite interesting.
Am I allowed to have Poch round to remember when it was good?
Can you imagine a dinner party? Me and 3 footballers, and you and Poch sitting in the corner, reminiscing about the good old days, crying into your pint glasses. Although Poch probably doesn't drink, to be fair.
Don't suppose Poch is crying. He turns up to work and sees Neymar and Mbappe and Messi. I don't suppose he's crying.
Yeah. Should we train today, or should we just not bother? Is that good? Yeah, I don't think Poch has got any concerns. I do like Pele, Best, Cruyff. Who else did we have?
Diego.
Diego.
Would you want him to wreck the place, wouldn't he?
I'd like to party with Diego. I'd like to party with Maradona for sure. That'd be a pretty good list. And we'll chuck in Terry Venables, I think, for fun. He's got a little vineyard in Portugal, hasn't he, Terry Venables? I think I've driven past it once. Someone was telling me Terry Venables is drinking wine down there.
Go and knock at the door.
Planet FPL Live 6 in Terry Venables'
backyard.
Coming soon. Do you want to let the listeners know what content we have coming up for the rest of the week? Because we have a packed week ahead.
I shall. Tomorrow, What happened to Berry 2 years later. We did a podcast which our older listeners will fondly remember from exactly 2 years ago, September 2019. Going to be catching up with what happened since that podcast. What's happened to Bury FC? Little bit of a spoiler. The town's not particularly getting on with each other at the moment. Tune in for that tomorrow. Wednesday, Sky Fantasy Football podcast ahead of the overhaul. We're going to be a detailed look at fixture planning ahead of Saturday's overhaul. Thursday's clash of the correspondents I alluded to earlier. Watford versus Wolves, 6th goal, and Bradley Parker talking Watford Wolves. I'll be streaming 3:00 Friday for us, James, 10 a.m. Saturday morning for the deadline stream. And on Patreon, we've got a Q&A today for our intermediate and above patrons. Tomorrow is a quiz, the Big Six and the Imposters. I haven't told Suj about that bit.
So the so-called Big Six.
The so-called Big Six and the Imposters by Gary Phantom Mantle.
Yes.
Wednesday, what are we doing on Wednesday? Oh, Tottenham, as we do. Thursday, another Sky Fantasy Football podcast. Me and Suj are going to come with final drafts and sense check each other and probably rip them back up afterwards, or at least Suj will. And Friday, we'll have our, as per usual, differential show, our full Game Week 4 preview.
Indeed. And if you are interested in becoming a patron, not only do you get that extra content that James mentioned for the advanced tiers, he does all sorts of tactics videos, news videos, and more. We have an active Slack that has dozens and dozens of channels, over 450 odd people talking about different teams, clubs, competitions, including the not FPL, but other fantasy sports competitions as well. There's even a cricket channel, James. And of course, we have some cash prize leagues there as well. So do head over to patreon.com/Planet FPL and you'll be able to jump on board and support the show. That's it, James, really, for today.
Nice. That was good fun, considering it was completely unscripted.
Exactly that.
Like
Stay
always.
safe, listeners, and we'll be back at you tomorrow. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Be nice to each other. Cue music, please, man child.